Hello and welcome. My name is Natty Cash, and once again we are into our NCAA basketball imperialism. This is part 9. If you have not seen any other videos, please make sure to go click the part 1 video, the link that's in the description below, and we're going to get ourselves started going in here. We're eliminating one team at a time until there's just one left to determine who is the best college program in the country. There were many surprises in our last video, so please make sure if you haven't watched that you go back and you watch that. But let's get ourselves rolling here. So back to our wheel here. Let's see who is our first up today. It looks like we are going to see the Scarlet Knights in action first. And as we spin the arrow, we'll see where they're going to try to attack first. So they're going to go mostly north, maybe a little bit to the northeast, which means Rutgers here are going to take on Seton Hall for their first chance at a conquest. And it is Rutgers that takes home the victory pretty handily in the end. There was some close times in the first half, but Rutgers was able to take it on and win pretty comfortably for their conquest. And even though Rutgers have now had their second conquest, still a small little space, but they'll get a chance to expand, I'm sure, later on. But back to the spinner to see where we're landing next. And it looks like we're headed to Western Carolina. We will see what direction they're going to expand for the first time. They're going to try to go due east, which means due east is going to take them into the Appalachian State Mountaineers territory. And even though it was a pretty close game, Appalachian State was winning basically the entire time. Western Carolina kept trying to push towards taking the lead, but never were able to. And Appalachian State once again gets to expand. And like that, Appalachian State gets a pretty nice chunk of Western Carolina, as they've got most of the west part of the state now. But back to the wheel we go to see where we're headed next. Looks like we're headed off to the Lone Star State, as we're going to have the Longhorns in action once again. And the Longhorns are going to try to attack going to the southwest, which means based on where their logo is, the southwest means they're taking on the Texas State Bobcats. And like that, the Longhorns take the victory. Texas State actually had the lead for most of the first half, but then Texas was able to apply the pressure, come home with a fairly comfortable victory. And with that, Texas has expanded pretty significantly, as they've captured a big part of the southern part of Texas. Now probably the biggest piece of the state other than Texas Tech. But back once again to the wheel, where are we headed off to next? Looks like we're headed out west, as we're going to find the Pacific Tigers. This will be their first time to expand, as they're going to go to straight north, which means they're going to go up against the behemoth that is Sacramento State. And it is Sacramento State that take the win. It's a close back and forth game for most of the first half, but Sacramento State was able to get the offense they needed to make it a comfortable win in the end. And Sacramento State defend their territory, picking up a small chunk to expand their already ginormous area that they have. But we go again. Let's see where the wheel takes us. So we're going to see the LIU Sharks, so Long Island University Sharks. And we'll see where they want to try to expand. They're going to expand moving northwest, which it's difficult to see down here, but the Sharks here going northwest mean they're going to take on St. John's. And I apologize not having any logos here, but St. John's does take the win pretty handily. It wasn't really much of a contest for them. And like that, St. John's gets their first little bit of expansion, creating a little bit of breathing room off of the island of Manhattan. But let's get back to the wheel, see where we're headed next. And it looks like next is heading to Pittsburgh. It has been a while since we've seen Pittsburgh in action, but they're going to try to travel straight north, which straight north from where their logo is means they're going to take on Penn State. That might be an interesting matchup. And in a nail-biting victory, Pittsburgh does come away with the win. A back-and-forth game throughout. I think probably a number of different lead changes, but in the second half, Pittsburgh started to gain a little bit of an edge. Penn State had one last chance to try to bring it together, but couldn't, and ended up losing in a nail-biter. And just like that, Pittsburgh takes another big piece of territory, has most of their state, and has expanded into the state of New York as well. But we're back to the wheel once more. Where are we headed off to next? We had a lot of places in the East Coast, and we're going to then head off to Tennessee to see if Vanderbilt can expand some more. Let's see what direction Vanderbilt's going to try to move in. They're going to try to go almost due east, and because the arrow had just a little bit of a south to it, right, they end up avoiding Kentucky, but they will end up playing Middle Tennessee. And Vanderbilt once again get a pretty significant victory. There wasn't really much contest in it as they cruise to take some more land. And once again, Vanderbilt get a chance to expand, really making their borders a very unique shape and size, as it stretches down this way and then kind of loops back around, kind of almost containing these two programs almost within it itself. And here we go, back to the wheel. Let's see where we're headed off to next. Oh, looks like we're going to the West Coast as we're going to see Seattle in action. Now we're going to ignore if the wheel spins to the west or to the north like this. So we're going to wait until we actually get some sort of direction, as it's going basically straight south. And in this corner of the country, going straight south means that Seattle's going to take on the Portland State Vikings. And it is the Portland State Vikings that get the victory. Close game in the first half, but Portland State were able to take the lead pretty significantly and end up getting a comfortable win and their first chance at conquering land. And with that, Portland State takes a nice big piece of Washington State and gets their first expansion of land. But we are back to the wheel once more. Let's see where we're headed next. Looks like we are headed to find the Fighting Illini as they try to expand once more in the easterly direction, which means they're going to take on the Purdue Boilermakers. This should be a fun matchup. And actually, Purdue make pretty easy work of Illinois, never losing in the game, and made a comfortable win in the end. And with that, Purdue gets their first expansion as they push their way into Illinois. Back again. Let's see where we're headed. Looks like this time we're going off in a similar spot. We're going to see Indiana in action today. Let's see what direction they're going to try to move in. Looks like they're trying to go up to the northwest, which means that Indiana are now going to take their shot at trying to take down Purdue. Purdue's got to defend one more time. And Purdue holds strong one more time, again pretty handily beating Indiana. Purdue might be a pretty big player in this series. And with that, Purdue has expanded once again, taking up more of Indiana and reducing the teams in Indiana just down to a handful now. But back to the wheel we go. Let's see where we're headed next. Looks like we're headed up to the northeast. We're going to see the Huskies in action. And let's see what direction they're going to try to go into. Looks like they're trying to go north, a little bit northeast, which means the Huskies are going to try to go into Massachusetts and take on Holy Cross. And the Yukon Huskies do get the win. They were leading for the basically the whole game. And so the score here probably favors Holy Cross a little bit more, but Yukon does take the victory. And with that, Yukon basically doubles their land as they expand north into Massachusetts. But let's go back to the spinner, see where we're headed next. Looks like we're going down south to find Florida Gulf Coast. Now they'll get their first chance to expand, but any arrow that's west like this will just respin because it's on the west coast of the state of Florida. They're going to go south. And you'll see that Florida Gulf Coast is then going to take on FIU for their first chance to expand. And it is Florida Gulf Coast that takes the victory. A back and forth game throughout with teams changing leads all the way through, and then Florida Gulf Coast gets a nice offensive leap to eventually secure the 11-point victory. And with that, FIU have taken a nice big chunk out of South Florida for their own. Alright, back to the wheel we go. Let's see what direction we go next. And we're going back up to Massachusetts as we're going to find the Stonehill Skyhawks there. Now Stonehill is right on the east coast, so we need to make sure we've got an arrow pointing there. And when there isn't many options, we're going to talk about what it means for them to go north. Never mind, they can't go north. We're going to try to spin again to see what direction they go. This might take a few spins just to get them in a direction. That's a little bit better. That's not exactly north, but they can go a little bit to the northwest. Because a little bit to the northwest, we're going to count that as hitting the Bryant Bulldogs territory right here. And it is the Bulldogs that get the victory. They were losing to start off with. Stonehill had a good start to the game, but Bryant was able to keep pushing forward and eventually getting a pretty comfortable victory in the end. And with that, Bryant ends up having a nice big piece of Massachusetts now, getting a lot more of the eastern coast. But back to the spinner we go. Let's see where we're looking at next. Looks like we're finally going to go see the Kansas Jayhawks in action. And let's see where Kansas is going to try to expand first. Looks like they're going to try to go a little bit to the northeast. That little tip to the east means that they're going to take on the Kansas City Roos. And it is the Jayhawks that do get the victory. Although it was a little bit close at the start of the game, Kansas was able to maintain a lead and hold on for the victory. And with that, Kansas gets their first conquest of the series, taking over a little bit of land in the state of Missouri. But let's keep the spinner spinning to see where we're off to next. Looks like we're going south as we hit the Auburn Tigers. And let's take a look at where Auburn is going to try to expand. They have expanded before, but now they're going to try to push west, which means they're going to have a bitter rivalry going up against Alabama. And in a very hard-fought battle, Alabama does get the victory, even though most of the game they were behind. Auburn was winning most of the game, and it wasn't until the final stages of the second half that Alabama took a lead and maintained that lead for the victory. And with that, Alabama continues their expansion of their Crimson Tide as they push their way east into a little bit of Georgia as well, creating a very unique border shape so far. But we keep going. Let's see where we're headed off to next. It looks like we're headed back to California to see Fresno State in action. Let's spin the arrow to see where Fresno State's going to go. Looks like they're going to try to head to the southwest, which means they're going to take on Cal State Fullerton for their piece of the West Coast. And what a battle it was for that piece of land. Back and forth game, back and forth, but Cal State Fullerton takes a pretty good lead going into the second half. Fresno State closes that up and then takes the 1-point victory to seal the deal. Amazing game. And with that, Fresno State extends down the west coast of California, picking up a nice big chunk of land and putting themselves as a presence within the state. But we head back to the wheel. Let's see where we're going next. Looks like we're headed off to see the Grambling State Tigers. They will get their first chance to try to expand as they're going to go to the northwest. And so Grambling, going to the northwest, is going to take on Texas A&M Commerce over here. So we'll see a first matchup between both of these. And it is the Texas A&M Commerce Lions that take the victory. A close game throughout, but Texas A&M seemed to be leading basically the entire time, so they get their first chance to conquer some land. And Texas A&M Commerce ends up getting their first piece of land as they push a little bit into Arkansas, a little bit into Louisiana. Let's see the wheel spin again. Where are we headed now? Looks like we're staying in a similar place because we're heading off to New Orleans. And let's see what direction the New Orleans Privateers are going to expand. Unfortunately, that's the one direction that they really can't expand as they're on the coast. But they can kind of go a little bit to the southwest, because that means New Orleans is going to take on Nichols State to try to take possession of the southern part of Louisiana. And it is New Orleans that takes the victory. Back and forth game, a few lead changes throughout, but New Orleans is the team that comes away with the victory. And with that, New Orleans gains a lot more of the Gulf Coast as they take off a good chunk of the southern part of Louisiana. But let's spin away again. Let's see what direction we're going in. And it looks like we're heading to the northeast to see Gonzaga. Well, let's see where they can conquest. It looks like they're trying to head to the east, which means Gonzaga is going to try to take on the Montana Grizzlies. And wow, what a close game this ended up being. Almost a big upset for Montana, and even they led for parts of the second half. But Gonzaga were able to take control at the end and squeak out a victory to gain some more land. And with that, Gonzaga expands further to the east and takes a nice chunk of Montana with it. But back to the spinner we go. Let's see where we're headed from here. Looks like we're headed back to the Lipscomb Bisons. And Lipscomb are going to try to expand as they're going to try to head a little bit to the northeast, which means just a little bit to the northeast means that they're going to take on Belmont. And it is Lipscomb that take home the victory pretty handily in the end, as they never really squandered their lead and comfortably get to take another piece of land. And now with Belmont out of the picture, Lipscomb really are kind of stuck in that they're going to have to face Vanderbilt if they really want to continue on in this series. But we are back again at the wheel. Let's see where we're headed off to next. It looks like we're going to find the Abilene Christian Wildcats. And let's see where they're going to try to have their first conquest. Looks like they're going to try to go to the southwest, which means for them, southwest means taking on Texas Tech. And it looks like a relatively close game by the scoreline, but it was Texas Tech that led most of the game. Abilene Christian did cut the score down to a tie game near the end of the second half, but Texas Tech still went away with the 6-point victory. And with that, Texas Tech again take a nice big chunk and have a pretty solid block on the western side of Texas. One more spin of the wheel to see where we're going to go before we wrap things up. It looks like we're going to head to Southeast Missouri State. And let's see what direction they're going to try to conquer for the first time. They're going to go up to the north, a little bit to the northeast, which means they're going to take on the Billikens of St. Louis. And it is St. Louis that does take home the victory. For the most part, they were leading, and then in the second half, they were just able to extend their lead to get a comfortable win and a little bit of land to go with it, too. And with that, St. Louis now has a nice, decent chunk of this part of the United States. And here we are, looking back at the map again, noting there's always a few extra changes that go along here, right? As places like Texas, Vanderbilt, Alabama, Pittsburgh expanding a little bit again too, as well as Gonzaga, Fresno State, many others. But we continue this process. So thanks again for watching. Please like and subscribe if you at all like this series. And note we're going to have many parts here because we're going to get this down to just one team in the end. So please make sure that you keep watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.